This is Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank Lotierzo, former fighter, part-time writer, and try to be full-time observer, joined by co-host Jack Hirsch, former 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. Jack, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good, but Frank, sometimes something happens and you don't have a chance to respond. Did I hear this correctly? Right before we went on the air, our executive producer, Mac, compared Jake Paul to Roberto Duran. Did I hear that correctly?
He did say that, Jack, and I let it go because I love Mac, but I'm not sure we saw the same thing.
Okay, but that's dominating the news. The Jake Paul, Tommy Fury fight. And I say, why not? Why not? You know, they fought, they entertained. It wasn't just talk. And I'm going to tell you, in the boxing world, Frank, we're talking more about the fights that are not being made than the ones that actually take place. So between Paul and Fury, they actually fought. It took place. It was a good fight. It was an entertaining fight. They're both pros, and you heard me correctly. I give Jake Paul that status. He could call himself a professional boxer as long as a YouTuber. He's no longer a gimmick fighter. I mean, he has a following through the gimmicks that help him make a fortune of money. But, you know, he's a valid fighter. He fought a hard 8 rounds. He came up short, but he was able to leave the ring with his head held high.
Jack, you know what the takeaway is? The takeaway is Deontay Wilder was out there. Obviously, Tyson Fury. Mike Tyson was out there. There were a lot of big-name people there, Jack. It was a big event. It was held on Sunday. It was seen in the United States Sunday afternoon, late afternoon, when nothing else compelling was on. And as you said last week, and I'm going to give you credit, you made me look at this a little different because, look, Jake Paul is trained by BJ Flores, a former cruiserweight contender. Tommy Fury comes from a fighting family. We know Tommy Fury's goal is to one day to fight for a title. And Jack, they fight. The fight was entertaining. They look like guys. Jake Paul looks like a guy that had no amateur experience and turned pro. And Tommy Fury looks like a guy that had a little bit of an amateur background and a few pro fights under his belt. And Jack, at the end of the day, that was the difference. Fury had the better ring generalship and he had better form. But he didn't outclass Paul, but he got the better of the fight. I had it 6-2. I did not make a prediction on the fight because at one time I had picked one or the other to win. The only thing I will say is I did feel a little bit leery if the fight went the distance because I just thought in the economical sense, it would be in the better interest of the money people to have Jake Paul win. Now, I saw today that he got $25 million and Fury got $7 million. Do you know anything about that?
We don't know the exact totals. Things are put on social media. How can they know exactly what the pay-per-view numbers were completely at this time? It takes a bit of time to sort it out. I imagine Jake Paul was working on a percentage to a large degree. But if you ask me, I wouldn't say they were that far off. I mean, it had to have been a hefty payday for Jake Paul, if not 25 million, certainly something close to the 20 million.
Jack, but the takeaway is this, and that's going to lead me into how I got to see the fight. These guys today, mainly Jake Paul, he knows how to appeal to the younger people, to bring them in, not the dinosaurs like me and you, okay? And it shows. With promotion, there is a big interest in boxing, but you need a story. Now, here's how I got to see the fight, Jack, because I know I saw what you put on my Facebook post. I know you ribbed me last week. I was going to get weak. Jack, I didn't get weak. I had to go to dinner last night at Wendy's son's house. It was the 1 year anniversary.
Wait. You went to dinner at Wendy's, Frank? That's kind of classy. What?
Come on, Jack.
I hear it right?
We went to her son's house. It was the 1 year passing of her father, which would mean her son's grandfather. So he had everybody over for dinner. Her son will be 35 in a couple months, and his younger brother will be 28 next month. So I get there. I didn't even say anything to Wendy that there was boxing or anything. I didn't even mention it to her. It wasn't on my radar. So we get there, and her son says to me, her older son, whose house we're at, he goes, Frank, what do you think about the fight? I said, you talking about Paul and Fury? He says, yeah. He goes, you're not covering it or watching it? I said, nah. I said, that's more of a circus. I said, I'm really not that interested in it. Then her younger son shows up about a half hour later. He goes, why don't you guys have this on? And it's not my house. I had no say. So the younger brother said to the older brother, he goes, dial that thing up. Jack, they put it on about 15 minutes before the fight started. Now, what was I to do? Run out of the room and not watch it. So I sat there. I didn't pay for it. I watched it. I was mildly entertained. And I don't think that Joe Louis or Ray Robinson or Muhammad Ali are turning over in their grave because I watched it. These guys fight. And as you said, to top off the show, we talk more about fights that aren't happening. And you know what? I'm kind of tired of that. So good for those guys. But what they're showing is if there's a market, if you promote it and cultivate it, and the old dinosaurs don't know how to do that.
I mean, I've seen highlights. I refuse to get the pay-per-view. I don't get pay-per-view unless they give me a decent show. Yesterday, they flirted with it. They had on the undercard Badou Jack against Junior Makabu, a cruiserweight title match. I mean, the belt itself didn't mean that much to me.
I didn't watch that, Jack. I missed that.
Right, not a bad matchup, but then you looked at the rest of the undercard, and it was a case of like, who are these guys? Just make it a little better for me. That's my objection with the pay-per-view show. So I followed it actually round by round as it was being put on ESPN. At the end of every round, they put exactly like a paragraph what happened, who they scored it for. Of course, that.
Wait a second, Jack. What was on ESPN that you were watching? Were they
on the ESPN website? Not on.
Oh,
ESPN,
okay.
Not on TV. Actually, to see it, they were doing a written report, but on a round-by-round basis. But they were reporting immediately after the round ended.
Right,
So
like they did the first Ali Frazier fight.
Right. So you'll guess I was getting the information as the fight was going along. But of course, once they put down what happened in the round, you have to wait 3 more minutes for the next and 3 minutes for the next. And you're kind of behind. And there's a little bit of drama that way. And again.
But Jack, what does that tell you? What does that tell you? How many fights do they do that on?
Yeah.
But this was an event. Right? News organizations, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, Newsmax, they all covered this fight. How many fights do they cover? So you have to take your hat off to these guys that they know how to drum up interest. But I saw it, Jack, and you know what? For the first 2 rounds, they definitely looked like beginners, and neither guy could get anything going. But again, Fury had better form. He was a little more sure of himself. By the 3rd round, they settled down, but Fury just had more tools. I mean, Jake Paul was looking for the big right hand and a couple of left hooks. Wasn't really setting anything up. He had a good jab, and that's a punch that Fury seems to be vulnerable to. But it wasn't that bad, and I don't feel like I need a shower to watch after watching it.
Listen, it's fine, Frank, especially when you look at the news, okay, what's going on. And by the way, the main reason the Gervonta Davis fight is going to be made with Ryan Garcia on April 22nd, far and away, the main reason is because Gervonta Davis is going for sentencing a couple of weeks later, and there's very little doubt that he's going to have to serve jail time. It's just a question of how long it's going to happen. It would be an utter shock if Tank Davis was just given probation. I'm not recommending what the judge does one way or the other, giving an opinion what the judge should do. But considering they tried to make a plea deal to prosecutors on Tank Davis's behalf,
and they couldn't do it,
and the judge refused to accept the plea deal, that means the judge is somewhat angry, figuring you're not getting off that easy. Like 1 month of house arrest or whatever. So it's the same thing. The school of thought to even both our favorite fight of all time, the fight of the century, Ali Frazier. If Ali wasn't at risk of going to prison at that time because he hadn't been cleared yet by the Supreme Court, maybe
it was 3 months after the fight, the hearing, the verdict.
Right, maybe the fight gets delayed. Ali takes more time to get ready,
which is what he wanted to do.
Right, but they figured they had to get the fight in because it was a massive payday for all concerned. And that's the feeling I get with Davis and Garcia. But I didn't mean to stray from the topic for now. But with Paul and Fury, good fight, good solid fight. I got around there on YouTube and clips. So I saw half the fight, not enough to score it. But looking at the CompuBox totals, which you hate, they were overwhelming in Fury's favor. Let me tell you what bothers me, too, a little about the fight once again, and it bothers me with all fights. You mentioned, I think, the knockdown a little while when Paul dropped Fury with a hard jab. Legitimate knockdown. Didn't hurt him, but you have to score the knockdown. Everyone's saying, oh, that's a 10-8 round automatically.
No way.
No, but that's what gets me disgusted. And I didn't see the judges' cards for the 8th round, but I can tell you now it's 10-8. I mean, why this sickness with 10-8 automatically when a guy's glove could just barely touch the canvas and he could dominate the rest of the round? I mean, it's so annoying.
And Fury had a point deducted, which I thought was a little picayune. So he did lose 2 points there. He clearly won the fight. If you just go by what happened in the ring for 8 rounds, Fury won at least 5, and I scored it 6. Jack, I don't want to see them fight again, but I just think it's such a good business model for them. I think they're going to.
Well, Paul had a point deducted too. And when I saw the report that came in during the fight, it criticized the referee for interjecting himself too much into the action.
Little too much. I would agree with that.
But he was justified to take that point away from Paul. Was rabbit punching.
Yes. I had forgotten about that. Yes, he was.
Times like this, hit him just twice. You don't have to be warned. All these fighters know what they're not supposed to do. You know you're not supposed to hit a guy flagrantly low. You don't deserve it. That gives you a free shot if you expect a warning. You forgot, let me hit him low once. Let me rabbit punch him a few times. They'll just warn me and then I won't do it anymore. And so that point was justified. You hit a guy behind the head, no warnings as far as I'm concerned.
Jack, okay, speaking of that fight regarding the name Fury, we had put up that we were going to touch on some fights that were coming up, and one of them, or possibly in the making, and one of them is Tyson Fury against Usyk. Okay? Now, did you see what's come down lately where the Furies are saying that there is no way that Usyk gets 50-50, and they made one proposal where it was 30% for Usyk, and if he won, he'd get 40%. Now, I think I told you last week that this fight is going to be hard to make because Tyson Fury is the draw, and he's going to call the shots, and he has more options. Joe, I disagree. Yeah, there are better fights in boxing gyms, but you know what? I was entertained for 8 hours.
Okay.
I mean, 8 rounds.
Frank, come on, man. Your tension. You're drifting off. You're getting mad.
I just saw what Joe said. And I wanted to address that.
Joe's one of our loyal listeners. That was before. We're talking about Usyk and Fury. Listen, Frank, it should work like this. A couple of mannerisms. Usyk is the heavyweight champion of the world. Fury isn't. Fury announced his retirement on numerous occasions. He's an adult. We're to take him at his word, even though you don't. You say, "Oh,
Jack, how many times are you going to go down this road? It's about money and who the draw is."
Who's the world heavyweight champion, Frank?
It doesn't matter. Who are the people going to see? Usyk is like Holyfield. He's a great fighter that nobody pays to see unless he has a dance partner.
We're talking about 50%, 50-50. Usyk is willing to go. Listen, Holmes was the heavyweight champ when he fought Cooney. Cooney was a major attraction.
And Holmes had to settle for 50-50.
Holmes was willing to settle for 50-50.
He wasn't willing, Jack. He had no choice.
Well, he had a choice not to fight Cooney.
Okay, so then he could fight three. He could fight Tim Witherspoon three times for the same money.
Okay, but Smoking Joe Frazier was a heavyweight champion the first time he met Ali, because Ali had announced his retirement, similar to what Fury did, but the public accepted Ali's retirement, okay? And he wasn't allowed to fight for a while, Ali too, so it made it easier to accept it. But Frazier took a 50-50 split, even though he was a champion, because we knew what an attraction Ali was. Also, the fight would take place in England, Usyk Fury. Usyk deserves extra money for going to England. He's giving up home field advantage. You deserve more for that.
Jack, but why is he doing that? If he's the heavyweight champ with 3 belts, why is he willing to make those concessions? Because he has no options to make big money other than with Fury. That's the monster fight.
Okay, but
I see your point, Jack, but when you are the money, when you're the draw, you can call the shots. I'm not saying I like it. I'm not saying it's fair, but I'm just saying in reality, that is the world we live in. Tyson Fury is talking about fighting Nagahu. He could go back and he could fight Joe Joyce. They're all big fights. Usyk is only known by the
Tyson
by
Fury,
by the hardcore boxing fans.
Who did you say Fury's talking of fighting? Joe Joyce?
He can fight Joe, whoever he fights, Jack. It's a big fight because he knows how to sell a fight and promote a fight. Usyk is like Holyfield. Okay. He just is a great fighter.
So if Tyson Fury was to fight Anthony Joshua, if Anthony Joshua steps up to the plate and says, "I'll fight you, Tyson Fury, but it's got to be 50-50. Let's say Fury beats Usyk. Let's just say they do fight after all. Fury beats him. Okay?
Right. And now he's even a bigger star than he is now if he beats Joshua.
But Joshua would probably still be bigger than Fury, certainly in the UK. I mean, Joshua's kind of the way Frank.
No way, Jack. No way. You mean to tell me after Anthony Joshua loses twice to Usyk, was stopped by Ruiz, Fury is undefeated, beat Wilder 2 out of 3. I actually think 3 out of 3. Okay. And now he beats Usyk. And you're going to tell me in the UK that Anthony Joshua has the same pull that Fury does? No way. No way. Fury is going to get more money or they're not going to fight.
Okay, Lee Groves, hey, how you doing? Lee puts down also Usyk is from Ukraine, and that means there are no home fights for him for some years to come, of course. But he has 3 belts, and he brings Fury the chance to become undisputed. That's worth something. But even casting the belts aside, and that does mean something, Usyk is the legitimate world heavyweight champion.
But Fury's considered the best heavyweight in the world, Jack, and you are on this show all the time saying that belts don't mean anything.
Not by everyone as far as being that best heavyweight in the world. There are a lot of people out there who think Usyk is.
They can think that.
And
they can think that.
There's certain X factors involved in this where it's kind of like a chess game in a sense. Fury's talking about fighting Deontay Wilder now.
He's just throwing that out there. He's not going to fight him again.
Don't be so sure. Manny Pacquiao fought Juan Manuel Marquez in the fourth fight when no one wanted to see it. It turned out to be a fight of the year. But going into the fight, people criticized it. Oh, we want Pacquiao Mayweather. We don't want Pacquiao Marquez. And they were really, they weren't happy about that fight being made, even though it turned out.
Usyk and Wilder and Fury are not going to fight again, Jack.
But Joe Joyce, he's promoted by Frank Warren, who also co-promotes Tyson Fury. So I kind of wonder if Usyk said, okay, I'm not going to fight Fury. I'm detouring to Joe Joyce, who he beat in the amateurs, by the way. Frank Warren, he might hold Joe Joyce back and maybe save him for Fury after a Deontay Wilder fight. So
the longer you talk, Jack, the more you're making my point. Thank you. I hadn't even thought of that. The bottom line is Fury calls the shots, and even if they strip him, he's still the biggest draw right now in the heavyweight division. All the hardcore guys can talk about Usyk, and he has the belt and how great he is, and I'm not going to dispute that, but we know it's called prize fighting. This is a business. Fury knows these are his best years to make big money. He can call the shots. If Fury and Usyk fight, I will predict right now, there's no way it'll be 50-50. And by Usyk not agreeing to less than 50 tells you he knows he doesn't have the leverage.
Frank, I have a fight. I have the terms all set. All set. The fight will be made between Usyk and Fury. And I guarantee you, Frank, Usyk is going to win by a knockout. Fury will get 60%, Usyk 40%. I guarantee a Usyk knockout, Usyk against Tommy Fury. The money that would make, you put it in Saudi Arabia, he fights the other Fury. Tommy Fury knows 60%, I can cash out. So he knocks me out in 3 rounds.
Jack, you should write for the WWE. I could never see that coming. I want to respond to Lee Groves. Lee says, isn't it strange that people don't want Fury Wilder 4, even though Fury Wilder 3 end up being fight of the year? And Lee, I don't think it's strange. Here's why. Because all of us know, you, me, and Jack know. We've seen that fight 3 times, and we know the outcome. There's no way Wilder beats Fury. He has to get lucky. He has to land a lottery shot. He's had him down 4 times in 3 fights. Can't keep him down. There's no interest in that fight, at least not for me. And I don't think I'm alone.
All right, Frank, let's say Wilder fought Andy Ruiz and he knocked him out in the round of 2. Then if you want to put him back with Fury again, it's more sellable to me, okay? I mean,
okay.
Sense.
I'll go with that, but not in their next fight.
Right. I could say he knocked out Robert Salinas in a round. He knocked out Andy Ruiz in 2 rounds. You want to know something? You want to match him in with Fury again, who he had on the deck twice in the last loss. I still don't like the fight, but, it might have a little appeal in a certain sense. I'm not, turned off by it.
You're not, but there's no way you would pick Wilder to win.
No, I couldn't see it.
Okay, so Jack, how's that compelling? I wouldn't pick him to win. I've seen it 3 times. There's no way he wins. Yeah. I agree with the Business Channel. Usyk ought to take the 60-40 where he can make more money if he wins. If he thinks he's going to win.
If he loses, he gets 30%.
No, he said 60-40 here. I don't think Usyk would go for 30%. But if they give him 60-40, which I think he can get, I think he should do that and bet on himself like Devin Haney did.
I could see that. Or maybe work something out if you Usyk with Fury. If I win, I get 50%. If I lose, I get like 35%, something like that.
So you and I are negotiating for fighters that we have no control over, and we spent the last 10 minutes talking about a fight that we won. And how sad is that? Because Paul and Fury at least fought. And other things are going on. How about, hey, Jack, you know what we need to talk about? Maybe the sand is run through the hourglass because your boy, pretty boy Floyd, did an exhibition this weekend and nobody was there. And do you know, Jack, I know some people that actually bought the Mayweather fiasco and complained about Jake Paul.
I didn't even know that. That was on pay-per-view. Do you know how much they charged?
For Mayweather?
Yeah, I didn't know.
I have no idea, and I could care less. What did they charge?
The stands were empty in the UK. Hardly anyone was there. You know, they held that show up an extra hour, hoping people would start filling the stands. It was an embarrassment by what I heard.
No, Floyd's time is through the out. He's run his course. I didn't see it. I have no interest in it. But it just amazes me that somebody will rip people that watched Fury and Paul, but they're okay watching Mayweather. What a joke.
Well, you know, Mayweather is a modern great, so it's a bit different, you know, and it's kind of like entertainment. But you know what it is? If it was Mayweather's first exhibition back, there'd be a certain amount of interest. And when these guys, a guy like Mayweather fights in an exhibition, you kind of wonder, is he getting ready for the real thing? Like if he fought Pacquiao in a real fight now, it would do massive business, even though they're both, you know, obviously past their primes.
Floyd Mayweather amazes me, Jack, because I've never seen anybody gouge the fans and manipulate the fans like Floyd Mayweather has since 2007 to 2023. He is an absolute genius. And speaking of a topic we are going to touch on, as far as that you brought up last week about who are some of the coolest great fighters in history, we know I'm not the biggest Floyd fan, but Jack, he's on that list. He is on that list because of his persona, his money, the way he boasts, and the show he makes, going in the banks and coming out with a wheelbarrow full of money, all the cars he buys, you know, his betting slips online. I never cared for Mayweather that much. He never held my interest, but I have to admit, just on the way he's conducted his career from a business perspective and the way he calls the shots, to me, that makes him one of the all-time cool fighters.
Yeah, Floyd's a pretty cool guy. He has Justin Bieber accompanying him to the ring, so that automatically...
Exactly, Jack. Hangs out with the rappers, the athletes.
Yeah, he bets big sums. The guy scores a touchdown in an NFL game. He hands Floyd the football, you know, stuff like that. Floyd passing a soup line with his fancy Rolls Royce and stopping, taking a look, even though that picture may have been doctored. It was not funny, but then again, you couldn't help but chuckle, like when you look at it. No, he was one of the cool guys. You know, it's a topic. We could go over some names. I don't know how interesting this is for the people out there.
Jack, I think it is pretty interesting because nobody else has done it. I made a list of some guys I think are cool. Let me hear a couple of yours.
Yeah, but let's define cool. Cool to me is what happened in my era. The modern young person, are they familiar with Fonzie from Happy Days? I mean, if they're not familiar with them, but that used to be cool back in the day, the leather jacket, the motorcycle, you know, and the whole bit. You know, John Travolta, Saturday Night Fever, you know, considered cool in that sense. But, you know, we got the two obvious guys. The talk last week, was more cool, Sugar Ray Robinson or Smoking Joe Frazier, believe it or not.
I think they're the top of the hill.
But you said something. You had an out for Frazier. You said, okay, maybe Sugar Ray Robinson. but Smoking Joe is the coolest heavyweight champion of all time. I'm calling out on that, Frank.
Go
What
ahead.
about Papa Jack Johnson? Did you see the way Papa
He-
Jack dressed? He drove his race cars through the deep South.
Jack, he made my list. I like that you brought him up. And the fact that he said basically, screw the establishment, taunted his white opponents, dated white women. He just didn't give a you-know-what, and that made him cool. And when he did it, it was cool because he had no NAACP or Black Lives Matter or any social advocates fighting for him. He was a man on an island, and that alone makes him cool. So you just picked off two of my guys, Mayweather and Jack Johnson. Throw somebody out. Give me one of your guys.
I'm sure you didn't think of, Frank.
Go ahead.
Gentleman Jim Corbett. The way he dressed, he was dapper. You know, he didn't play the part of a fighter.
You're right. He was more of like a hoity-toity snob. Okay, I didn't think of him maybe a little too far back for me to really get a grasp of. Okay, Corbett, give me another one.
Let me throw a name at you. He's not at the top of my list. He'd maybe just barely make it. And this is going to hit home to you, Frank, and shame on you for not even probably thinking of this guy.
Wait a second, Jack. I have my list here, and I haven't read it.
I know you didn't think of this guy, Frank.
Go ahead.
We missed his closest home. What about Randall Tex Cobb? Wasn't he pretty cool with all his?
He wasn't a great fighter, though, so that's why I didn't count him.
Oh, well, we're talking about history of boxing. Then I can't count a guy.
No, we said great fighters.
How about Playboy Ruben Olivares? He was kind of cool, Ruben.
Okay. I'll give you that.
What about young Stribling? The motorcycle, met a violent death, on a motorcycle.
I know how he died, but I don't know a whole lot about his outside boxing life. Give me one more, then I'll give you one of mine.
What about Ingemar Johansson? He was considered pretty cool, like a pretty boy.
Jack, come on. He was a one-punch, one-fight wonder.
Wait, no. Listen, we're talking about
and his outside life. What was so cool about him?
You don't like what kind of champion he was. You think he's over?
No, but Jack, he doesn't even make the great as a great fighter. This was supposed to be great fighters. We could come up with a lot of characters.
We could put Jake Paul on the list, the coolest of all time.
No.
Jake Paul's a pretty cool guy.
I'll give you one. Now, I did have Jack Johnson on my list. I have Mayweather. I'm going to go a little more recent. Carlos Monzon.
There's nothing cool about him. The guy was
Jack. He was in movies. He hung out with beautiful women. He was a big time partier. He wasn't the hardest trainer. He lived every day like it was his last day. He thought he was above the law. He was a narcissist, but that kind of made him cool. I think he would have been a fun guy to hang out with. And with me, that's how I define cool. Who's somebody that when we're away from boxing that I think would be fun to hang out with? And I think if you were part of Monzon's crowd, I think he would have been the man.
Monzon, you'd have to watch your back with every moment. He was a bad guy. I'm going to tell you another middleweight who would have been a ton of fun, and he was a good guy, unlike Monzon, who was a bad guy. Monzon was a bad guy. Okay.
He was a narcissist, Jack, but I still think he was a bad dude, a cool dude.
You would have had a ton of fun with back in the day. Mickey Walker. You hang out with his manager, Jack Hearns, have a night on the town. Are you kidding me?
He made my list.
Oh, he did. Okay.
He made my list. All right, I'll give you another one, a recent one. And I don't think anybody can doubt this. Sugar Ray Leonard.
Yeah.
Into styling, played other sports, was a great tennis player, a real good golfer, goes to all the big sporting events, is treated like a Hollywood celebrity. He's a rock star wherever he goes. He held on to his money. He's a nice looking guy. He's still in shape. He's been married for 30 years. He has a good life. I mean, in the 80s, he had some bumps, But overall, I think Sugar Ray Leonard, he made my list.
Pretty cool guy. Now he's pretty cool guy. He always related well. For all his faults, Sugar Ray Leonard was always good to the fans.
Yes.
He got some good qualities.
I'll give you another guy that probably would have been fun with if you were in his circle. Jake LaMotta.
I don't think so.
I think Jake would have been fun to party with, and his attitude, how he didn't give a damn. He thought he was the baddest guy on the planet, even though he was a middleweight. The gorgeous wife that he had, how crazy he was about Vicky. I think there's something cool about Jake LaMotta.
Let me tell you something, Frank. If Jake had to go to the men's room and you were chatting and smiling, and
he'd come back and want to fight
to Vicky, and she was giggling for 1 second close to you, he might be in a rage. If he didn't hit her, he'd hit you, one of the two.
Okay, or both.
I don't know about Jake LaMotta. Please, not.
I think Jake LaMotta, Jack. Jack. After boxing, he did some comedy and he did some shows. He wanted to be in the show business. To me, I think that stuff is kind of cool.
Okay, now you say Muhammad Ali jokes around a lot. He doesn't make our list. But what about Max Baer? He joked around more than Ali, even though Ali's jokes were better, I'm sure.
I think Max Baer didn't make my list, but I could see that. I could see that.
And yeah, cool guy.
But there was a coolness to Ali in the fact that he was such a good person, so approachable. He was an advocate for the common man. He was very funny, but away from the spotlight, he was pretty much, I don't want to say boring, but he was pretty much a normal guy as far as he wasn't loud. You didn't know him. So many people and I spent some time around him, and although this is when he was older, but he was a funny guy. But I think he's one of those guys, he had a lot of cool cars, Jack. I wouldn't be surprised if he even know how to drove them. I just think he had them because I'm Muhammad Ali, and that's what I'm supposed to have. But as far as enjoying it, like Frazier, and doing the work and the modifications to make it go faster and hanging out with motorheads, no, that was not Ali.
Well, I could take Fonzie on Happy Days. Could you imagine he pulls up to where they had that, I don't know what you call it, a candy store, the soda store, whatever you want to call it. And he sees Muhammad Ali. Ali'd say, "Hey, Fonz, come on, man, let's go and catch the monster movie over there. We'll go out for ice cream later." And Fonz would say, No, I got stuff to do, Muhammad. Compare that to Smoking Joe pulling up in his motorcycle, and he says, "Hey, Fonz, you dragging along or what, man?" And he says, "Sure, Joe." And they rev the motorcycles and they take
Absolutely. Jack, I think Smoking Joe's the coolest heavyweight champ ever as far as cool and outside the ring life. But everybody's definition is cool. Everybody's definition of cool is different. I'll give you another one, and I know you're not going to see this, but I'm going to say Bernard Hopkins, and here's why. Because of the way that he comported his life outside the ring after he got in trouble, the way that he self-managed his career, how he preserved himself, how he was smart with his money, how he never let himself get out of shape, how a guy with little education was able to beat the smart guys and the suits in the boardroom. And I just think there's a coolness about Bernard that he understood all the aspects of boxing. And I wrote a few articles back in 2005, Jack. And I actually thought at the time, and I may still think that Hopkins, because of how unique he was one of the most interesting, great fighters and champions in the history of the game.
Let me tell you, I've told this Hopkins story a couple of times before. I'm not sure whether I ever said it on Gloved Fist, but this was in 2005 in Las Vegas, the Boxing Writers Association of America's dinner. I'm hanging out with him and Tom Hauser at the cocktail party. A fan comes over with a glove. Now, Hopkins was a world middleweight champion at the time. A fan comes over for the glove. He asks Hopkins to autograph it. Hopkins says, I'll autograph it if you give me $20. The fan gives him the 20. Hopkins puts it in his pocket, signs the glove, gives it back to the fan, and then he says, when you sell this glove that was signed by the undisputed world middleweight champion, you're going to make a lot more than the $20 you just gave me. And I thought it was so cool the way he was doing business. And Bernard admitted, I don't need the 20, but I could go out, get a couple of magazines, a couple of bottles of water.
Jack, that's what's so cool.
And he said the guy's going to sell the glove and make money on it.
Jack, that is what's so cool about Hopkins. And I believe to this day, Hopkins understood the business of boxing better than any other fighter who's lived. He knows where the money came from. He knows how it's divided. And think about it. He was an Olympic champ. He wasn't an Olympic champion. He wasn't the kid next door like Ray Leonard. He didn't have the Pepsi smile like De La Hoya. He was kind of a hardcore guy from the street, but yet he manipulated Wall Street and Fifth Avenue. And I think there's a coolness about that.
Okay, so we have our general list. So I think if we go gold, silver, and bronze, I think Sugar Ray Robinson is the ultimate cool guy of all time, gets a gold medal. You have to agree with me, Frank. I can't talk for you.
I'm going to give 2 golds. Frazier and Robinson ran the same time in the gold medal match. They both get a gold.
And let's just lump 3 in because Jack Johnson was a cool cat. Just, and a part of things that
I couldn't put him with those guys, but he's in the. Hey, Jack, we didn't mention Joe Louis. Talk about a guy that was style and hung out with the big people.
Yeah,
Joe Louis was a very stylish guy, not quite like Robinson, and he knew his lane.
He knew his lane. He knew how far he could go to be cool.
Leith, George Foreman is on my list. I agree. George Foreman is on my list. He's not at the top, Lee, but he's up there because of the way he reinvented his personality.
Well, then you could say
the way he comports himself out of the ring. He's a big car collector. He's good with his money. He what?
Hamed and Camacho, Prince Nassim Hamed, Hector Camacho, their antics. But they deserve consideration at least. Frank, okay, so the big fight is taking place. I didn't think it was going to take place April 22nd, Tank Davis, Ryan Garcia. And I really believe it absolutely is taking place now because Tank is getting sentenced a couple of weeks later. If one of the fighters pulls out, it's absolutely legitimate. No excuse, right. No this. And we could start talking about it from a boxing viewpoint.
I hope it happens, Jack. You know why? Because I was wrong in my proclamation that Crawford and Spence would fight because of the emergence of Boots Ennis. And I'm glad to hear you admit you were wrong, didn't think it would happen, but now you believe it's going to happen.
It's only happening. Make no mistake about it. If Tank wasn't getting sentenced on that date, it wasn't going to happen. It flat out wasn't going to happen.
Okay, but it is going to happen.
They have to make it now. They have virtually no choice. Tank's not going to take a fight for chump change in the meantime. He's got to get the biggest payday out there. That's the only reason it's happening. Circumstance. Spence and Crawford would absolutely take place if one of them was being sentenced and they were going to be probably going to jail. They would
probably.
And it happened with Ali Frazier, the first fight. That's why it took place when it did. But at the end of the day, it's a boxing match. Let me ask you this. Does Tank have a ready-made excuse if he loses? He could say, well, mentally I wasn't there because of the thought, I knew I was going to get sent away for a while.
Jack, but the fight, of course he has that excuse. And if he doesn't have that, he'll come up with another one. They all have excuses when they lose.
Well, and
his fans will buy that, and his people that are his detractors won't. But yeah, he can use that as an excuse. Doesn't mean it's legit. doesn't mean it applied. I mean, look at Jake Paul. He's talking about now he was sick before the fight. He wasn't 100%, but I don't want to use that as an excuse, but he brings it up. None of them can take it on the chin when it comes to taking the loss clean and just say, I got beat. He was better. Seldom. I mean, Alexis Aguayo is one of the rare guys that'll do that, but not many of them can.
Anthony Joshua has been a very good loser in his 3 losses in his career. Keep that in mind. But that's another issue. Will Tank need an excuse?
Jack, did you see what Lomachenko said about the fight? He's a big advocate, and he likes Tank in that fight. He said fighting tall guys with reach is nothing new for him. He knows how to negate it, and he thinks he has the two-handed power and the quickness. So that sheds a little light because Lomachenko is one of the fighters that when he speaks, I will listen to him because I know he's a student of the game, understands strategies, and I think he can block out his bias.
I don't. Lomachenko has just one opinion. He's never been in the ring with Tank. He's never been in the ring with Garcia, unless they somehow sparred, and I have no knowledge that they did. The fight's 7 weeks away, close to 7 weeks away. I'm going to go on record now, Frank. I think Ryan Garcia shuts Tank down, wins a clear decision.
If I'm right now, my pick, I'm going to go with Tank. I think he's going to make Garcia overcommit and catch him and knock him out. I don't think Garcia's got the greatest chin. I think Tank has better 2 hands. I think the reach will be a problem, but if I'm forced to pick right now, I'd make that a 55-45 fight for Tank.
What evidence do you have that Garcia doesn't have a decent chin? Are you going to tell me about the Luke Campbell fight?
I saw him drop, and Jack, he was hurt.
He was shook without question. He admitted
Okay. If Luke Campbell can drop him, Tank can put him away.
But listen, that was the same logic. Henry Cooper drops Muhammad Ali. Okay, before the fight with Sonny Liston, the one fight before, and the thought was, well, if Cooper could hurt him that bad, Liston's going to obliterate him. I mean, we hear that all the time. I mean, come on.
Okay, nobody knew back then that Muhammad Ali was possibly the greatest heavyweight ever.
Every fighter at one point in his career, I shouldn't say every fighter, practically every fighter gets shook up and is in trouble and gets hurt, gets dropped. I mean, it happens all the time.
Jack, I think Tank has more tools. I think he's a better overall fighter. I think size will be a problem. I do agree with that, but I think he'll be able to negate it.
They're fighting at a catch weight, 136 pounds. And meanwhile, they're going to bill it as some type of lightweight title match. Devin Haney's the real lightweight champion. But
and who do you like in that fight?
I like Devin Haney, absolutely, clearly. He's not the same Lomachenko. If it was the same Lomachenko, a peak Lomachenko entering the ring, I'd have to really analyze the fight very, very carefully. But it's obvious, this version of Lomachenko against Devin Haney, who's an exceptional talent. I don't see I
think size is going to be a factor as long as Haney's not drained at the weight, because we know he's going to be at 140, and we know Lomachenko is really a junior lightweight. So I think the size and the age are going to be a factor, and the fact that Haney can put him together and he can box. He can box. He has the jab, and I think he can offset Lomachenko. Right now, I would pick Haney, but I'm not sure I'd bet on him.
Haney's clear to me. That's not a hard fight to pick. I mean, even though I'm picking Garcia to beat Tank Davis, I can see Tank Davis winning the fight. Okay.
You can't see Lomachenko winning?
I can't see Lomachenko winning the fight. I wouldn't be shocked. If Tank wins, I'm not going to say, oh, I'm shocked. I'm not even going to be surprised. I mean, I'm picking Garcia. I'm firm on Garcia, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tank wins because I.
But you'd be surprised if Lomachenko beat Haney.
Be very, very surprised.
I wouldn't.
Lomachenko, very, very.
No, Lomachenko has a style that's still hard to solve. He's a real fighter. He'll have his A game. I trust his constitution as far as in a tough fight, not folding. I just think that the birth certificate and the size is going to be his issue. A little bit with his style, but I think his big thing is going to have to overcome the size and strength and the birth certificate. And let me just touch on one thing. By the way, Jack, I see here Lee said, and Liston never hit Clay with a flush hook in either fight. This is the anniversary. This week is the anniversary of Ali winning the title from Liston. And Lee, what I would say to that is, I don't think Sonny ever caught Cassius on the chin with his Sunday shot. But in the 5th round, when he had his eyes blinded, Liston really did work him over to the body and punched him around that ring. So he did get through and he landed some big shots. And that's always my argument to the guys that say the first fight was fixed. There's no way Sonny was holding back in the 5th round.
No, not
Would
at
you
all.
agree, Jack?
No, I agree completely. I mean, I don't listen to those conspiracy theories about it being fixed, this and that. Come on. I mean, we hear that.
Not the first fight.
I mean, do you feel the second fight was on the level?
I'm not sure if it was a bag job, Jack, but I could see this. I can see that Liston may have been a little bit undone by the thought of the Muslims being there and their threats to assassinate him during the fight. And I think he might have realized when Ali dropped him with the right hand, and it was a legit shot, that he said, okay, this is a year after our last fight. This kid's bigger and stronger, and he's probably going to humiliate me and embarrass me. I think Liston quit more than he took a dive.
Perhaps. Yeah, perhaps. A couple of more fights to serve honorable mention that are going to be made.
Go ahead.
Announced, let's see, Josh Taylor against Teofimo Lopez and Jack Catterall against Regis Prograis. You know what annoys me about Josh Taylor? For all his talk, he got a disputed decision.
I know what you're going to say.
First fight. He's had opportunities to go with Jack Catterall again. It's twice it looked like they made the match and Josh Taylor pulled out injuries, which I'm not questioning the legitimacy. So why is he finding himself in the ring with Teofimo Lopez? I mean, hold out for Jack Catterall for all his tough talk. Come on. And that fight, Teofimo and Josh Taylor, is a very good fight. Very good fight. Prograis, I definitely like over Catterall. Josh Taylor, Teofimo. I have to analyze it a bit more because if Teofimo shows up in top form like he was against Richard Comney and Lomachenko, interesting. So I'm going to hold off my prediction.
Okay, Jack. So you like, who did you pick in the Prograis fight?
Prograis, definitely. Yeah, definitely. He's a better fighter than Catterall.
I like Prograis there too, and I actually think there's a shot that I might even make him the favorite to be the best 140-pounder in the world. So I like Prograis, and I like Taylor over Catterall. I still think Catterall had the night of his life against Taylor.
They're not fighting Taylor's.
I mean Taylor over Lopez. I'm sorry. I think Catterall had the night of his life and gave him a better fight than he ever will in the future. And I think a lot of that goes along with Lopez. I think Taylor will beat Teofimo. I think Teofimo hears voices right now. I don't think he knows who he is. And if he couldn't beat Kambosa, he is not going to beat Taylor. Taylor is elite. I like Taylor in that fight. And Lee, I don't hate CompuBox.
We got to get our fantasy fights in a couple.
But Lee, I just think if you and I sat in the room and watched the same fight, we come up with different counts a lot. Jack, we don't have that many, so let's hit the best one, and that was Dick Tiger versus Carlos Monzon.
Not a hard fight to pick, Frank. And Dick Tiger was a great fighter. I mean, after losing the middleweight title to move up in weight and, win the light heavyweight championship from Jose Torres, defended against him, the number one contender, Roger Rouse. He only lost it to a giant in Bob Foster, who's much bigger than him. And then he
was 37 when that happened.
Right, and then he rebounded till,
he beat Torres.
twins, and he beat Nino Benvenuti after losing to Foster. But styles make fights. Monzone's style was all wrong for Tiger. He could outbox Tiger from the outside. Tiger was good if a guy met him head on or came to him, in any way. But to go after Monzone would beat him the way he did Benny Briscoe, just poking him with left hands all night.
Okay, so you say it's not a hard fight to call.
Monzone by a clear decision.
All right, let me ask you this. Who did Carlos Monzone beat that Dick Tiger would not have beat? Is there anybody Monzone beat that you would make a favorite over Tiger?
Emil Griffith.
Jack, both of those fights, especially that first fight, very, very controversial. And some people think that Griffith beat Monzone in their 73 rematch. But that's okay. That's fair. If you want to say Griffith, I'll accept that.
I don't know whether I pick him, but I could say Rodrigo Valdez would have beaten Tiger.
And I think that's a 50-50 fight.
Yeah.
And you just named the two guys that gave Monzone his toughest fights. And we're not sure if they would both beat Dick Tiger. I think Dick Tiger, he would not beat Monzone, but I think his strength and his pressure and his somewhat unpredictability would be an issue for Monzone. I think it would be every bit as close and as tough as the Rodrigo Valdez fights. And I would pick Monzone, Jack. But I'll tell you what, if I bet on him, I'd be there on pins and needles until the decision was announced. I don't think either guy could knock the other guy out. But I do think that Tiger at 160, in shape, the 65, 66 version of Tiger, the one that fought Giardello, the prime Tiger, I think he can do everything that Griffith did in both of those fights and make it tough for him. And the same thing with Rodrigo Valdez. I think Valdez was a little bigger puncher than Tiger, but I think Tiger might have been a little stronger and a little more aggressive. So we agree. I'm just not as confident as you are on that. The other one was David Haye versus Evander Holyfield. The person that submitted it said you can call it cruiserweight or heavyweight. I'll go first. Holyfield just has a little more of everything. Maybe Haye might have a tad more power at heavyweight, but he's not going to dent Evander Holyfield. I think it's a good fight for a while, but I think Holyfield's chin and his heart and his toughness, he would just grind David Haye down and stop him.
Haye would have a shot at winning because he was a really big puncher. There, cruiserweight, heavyweight. But how do you go against Evander Holyfield? I mean, if they fought best 2 out of 3, I couldn't see Haye winning twice. Maybe Haye could grab one fight, but no. I mean, Holyfield was the better fight at the end of the day. You just can't go against him.
And Holyfield, Jack, what people forget about Holyfield is how versatile he was, how he could bounce in and out and drift side to side. When he had to be an attacker, he could fight as an attacker. The way, and I know everybody's going to talk about Fan Man and Bo was in great shape, but he completely changed his style for the rematch. And even though it was close, and I believe Bo may have even outlanded him, I think that Holyfield's versatility makes him one of the all-time greats. And if he can hang in there with Tyson and not get dropped or stopped, I just don't see anywhere David Haye goes to beat him. But again, with Holyfield, it comes down to his toughness, his versatility, and his chin. So I have no problem picking Evander Holyfield over David Haye. At cruiser, I have Holyfield, the greatest cruiserweight of all time, and he's in my top 10 heavyweights of all time. David Haye is not.
A nice way to end the show with Holyfield's hand raised in victory. So till next week, Frank. It was a lot of fun. See you next week.
All right, Jack, everybody, thanks for watching. and we will see you next week.